So, Alan, thank you so much for taking a bit of time out of your Friday morning for coming along and having a quick chat with me. I'm delighted to have Alan White, who is a teacher and wellbeing author, and also a neighbour. So he literally lives 5 doors up from my house. So when we're in this time of quarantine, we literally have to communicate via Zoom. So Alan, come here. Thanks a million for taking a bit of time
No
out,
matter,
and
James.
looking forward to having a bit of a chat. So do you want to give us a bit of background in terms of your own experience and I suppose what brought you to be what you do right now?
No, I suppose I'm teaching now for over 10 years, and while I was teaching, I studied what's called choice theory psychology, with a view to applying that to my teaching practice. And while doing that, I began to kind of develop resources for young people's. My main resource being what's called Changes. It's 30-day mental well-being challenge. So there's a version for second level and primary level students. And I find that the impact that wellbeing education can have on the lives of students, and even to the point of the performance of students, is really effective. So that's why I spend a lot of my time working in those areas. And recently, I've started working with a lot of corporates and companies doing wellbeing workshops and writing content for employee health and safety companies as well for their websites all around the area of wellbeing.
I suppose there's not to say that there's a good or bad time to be in this in that sort of field, but undoubtedly where we find ourselves right now, I'm sure that you're pretty busy. I must actually apologize. That's my son in the background there. If anyone's hearing him, he's shouting for his breakfast. So I apologize for that, Alan. But yeah, I mean, like in terms of now, obviously the content that you're writing, the stuff you're delivering. Do you find it has sort of changed, or have you changed direction in terms of how you support people?
The core hasn't changed because the concepts of well-being remain constant, but I suppose the theme or the tone of what you're working on at the moment changes because we're looking at the world, I suppose, through a completely new lens. I suppose what's called our perceptual spheres, which is what we tend to notice in the world, has been blown wide open now, and there's a lot of fear and uncertainty out there. And a lot of what I suppose people are asking me now is how do you help people to deal with that fear and that uncertainty? And I think that it's important to remember the basics when we're talking about fear and uncertainty, that none of us have any of the answers at the moment, but there are lots of different things that we can do to help both ourselves as adults and especially our children as well cope through this time, because for young people at the moment it's very frustrating. I think we tend to forget that throughout this, that young people, they're still young people, and they still have a lot of needs that they wanted to have met as well. So we need to bear, as parents, we need to bear that in mind as well, and try to help our children navigate these strange circumstances as best they can.
I think there was something you said to me the last time we were just chatting there. That was kind of in and around, controlling the controllables, and I think that's something really nice. And I know we hear that as we go on, but like, is that something that you sort of advise to people, or what's your sort of take on that sort of a?
Yeah, so like I remember hearing the phrase a long time ago, control the controllables. A lot of businesses would use that, and how does that apply to ourselves? Because there's so much outside of our control at the moment. But what I mean by controlling the controllables is things like, what can you control in each day? And there's lots of things that are still within our power, within our control. And when it comes to ourselves, a lot of us are working from home at the moment. We're trying to develop new routines. Our children, they're trying to do their schoolwork from home, and houses can get very quickly chaotic. And I think when we talk about control the controllables, what we mean by is that we need to plan each day. We have a new reality, we have a new normal. So planning each day, planning a routine for each day and sticking to that routine as best we can, because in a busy household, for example, there's going to be maybe 3-4 people, 5 people even, who need to get certain things done during the day. We have confined spaces, so how are we going to manage all that? So planning out the day, what time am I going to do my work, what time are you going to do the school work, and things like that as well. They're all very, very important to put into place. The other thing to do is, when we're talking specifically about young people, is to create a schoolwork plan for them. And most, if not all schools really, they're communicating online now. There's online classes, there's email work going on as well. So there's lots of different things going on, and we have to bear in mind as well that this is all brand new for students, and some of them might find it a little bit overwhelming, the amount of work that's coming through on email. So they'll need a little bit of help planning that out and planning how to manage that as well. And again, when we're talking about schoolwork, I think it's important to remember that the home, it's not a classroom. We have to adjust our expectations of what can be achieved at home because there's so many different things going on. A lot of parents have an expectation that maybe their children will be sitting down for an equivalent to the school day, and that's just not realistic. Outside of the distractions that are at home, if we look at what a school day is really like, if you're in primary school, when you're switching subjects or whatever that is, you get little breathers, you get little breaks. The secondary school, between every 40-minute class, you get little breathers and things like that as well. So expecting a young person to sit down for hours and then working away in their schoolwork, it's just not realistic as well. The other thing I'll say on that note as well, because we're talking specifically about well-being, is that when we're talking about schoolwork, there's a need to look at quality over quantity as well, and that we're saying there just to adjust your expectations time-wise, but once there is an effort being made and the work that's being handed up is of good quality, even if it takes a shorter amount of time than what you think they should be spending on it, getting work in is good, and parents will tend to put themselves under a lot of pressure, which very often can be conveyed onto the child as well, that certain timing should be used, or there should be certain time spent. I'd focus more on the quality of the work, if you like. The other thing that's important there.
Sorry, Alan, go ahead.
The other thing that's important there is that we need to plan for regular breaks as well. Because like a lot of young people, they need regular breaks, movement breaks, breathers, because as well as the stress of what's going on at the moment, a lot of young people, the stress of their schoolwork and things like that as well, and they need to get regular breaks in as well. So we need to plan for those. So my advice is always to kind of short amounts of time spent working and break, and then back to the work again. So because spending too much time in one go at the work will actually become counterproductive after a period of time, and you won't be able to concentrate anymore.
Yeah, I think in terms of concentration, that's interesting. Like, that's something that I certainly have seen. And again, we were kind of chatting about it last week at Hockley, but over the week, this weekend, last week, I've got lots of emails from parents kind of a bit concerned about how they help their kids concentrate more, or how they help them, like almost as you said, they're literally sit at the desk for longer. And I think that's probably one of the myths, is that it's not necessarily about the time you spend at the desk. It's more so, like I said, the quality of the work you get done.
Yeah. If the child spends 15 minutes doing something, and what they produce at the end of that, you can see that there's a good effort put in, and it's a good piece of work, then that's a good achievement. The other things I suppose that will help them, I suppose, if you want to increase concentration and get your 15-20 minutes, 30-minute blocks, depending on the age as they get older, is to maybe just encourage them, or maybe even help them if they're younger, to organize their materials. That you have your plan, you have your schoolwork plan, but also you need to have your materials organized, because a lot of young people struggle with that, and we see that in school all the time, that they might forget bits and pieces, and they mightn't have a pen, or they mightn't know where their book is and things like that as well. So before they begin, just give them a hand maybe organizing their materials, and that make it that bit easier for them as well.
And I think, like, again, a really important point, because if we reflect on some of the parents that are probably watching this, or the parents certainly that I work with in and around your ability, it's parents of kids with, dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, autism. And so obviously that structure is really, really important. And the more we can help our kids, the better. One kind of thing that I think, again, I see coming up a lot, is that we kind of are working off of this 9-3 schedule. And for lots of people, that just isn't realistic. We've lots of parents that are trying to work from home. Like many of us, both parents are trying to do a full day's work and homeschool, and, take care of emotions, and take care of, like, just thinking about what's going on outside the door. So I mean, is it really, I know you can't say it's just you need to do an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, but like there's kind of somewhere there where you say maybe you do a half an hour in the morning, a few 20-minute busts, and then you do something in the afternoon, and then it's more around some free time, some exercise, some chores in the house, whatever it might be. But there's learning in those other things as well, I think, especially for younger kids.
There is absolutely, and I think this is an opportunity to kind of learn new things as well. And I think as well as the schoolwork, it's important to plan, I suppose, creative time and stuff like that as well, and time to get a bit of exercise. And as you said, if there's two parents working, trying to do a full day's work, and there's children in the house who are trying to do a full day's school, there's nobody going to manage that, and it's going to end up increasing the stress levels and increasing the anxiety in the house. So I go back to the point that it's quality over quantity. And in a lot of ways, there's lots of opportunities in this as well, whereby, as well as the school day, as you said there, you could schedule out maybe things that they could do around the house. Maybe there's time where they could maybe relax and connect with their friends over technology, because that's very important. We'll talk about that in a minute. But it's the importance of the schedule, because we work best when we are in a routine. And everybody works best when they are in a routine, and we feel more secure in ourselves, and we feel less stressed when there's a routine, because when we know what to expect every day, that relaxes us down, and it decreases our overall stress levels. So I think the most important thing is to have a routine, and to have realistic expectations as well, as to what everybody, be it the parent who's trying to work from home or the child is trying to learn from home, everybody has to adjust their expectations of what's likely to be achieved. And anything that's good, and any bit of quality work that's done is good. And I think that, and the large from whom I'm talking to, certainly schools and the majority of employers are aware of that, and they do accept that as well.
I saw one really interesting quote there last week. I think I popped it up on our Facebook as well. And I think it was around, you're not necessarily, and this is around work, I suppose, you're not necessarily working from home. You're working from home during a crisis, and so I think it's the same in terms of homeschooling. You're not necessarily homeschooling. You're literally just looking after and trying to, I suppose, help your kids with some work. And so we're not in this is not norm. Like, this is just not the norm, obviously. Like, parents aren't prepared. We've no childcare. I think it's important that we bear those things in mind as parents and as educators as well, obviously.
It is, and it's our natural inclination to want to do our best and to keep our productivity levels as high as they possibly can, but that's just not realistic at the moment. And I think when it comes to the homeschooling part of it, like, parents need to remember that they're not teachers, they're parents. They're doing their best to help help their children. The home is not it's not a classroom, and I think it's very important as well that people reach out for help if they need it as well. Like, in the systems that are set up in schools at the moment, like, teachers are available to answer questions online, if there is a difficulty there. And I think there might be a reluctance sometimes to send an email back to teachers saying, could you explain this to me as well? But that's what the teachers are there for, and they're happy to do that as well, because you're not going to have all the answers, and you're not going to have the expertise in every area. So that's important to remember as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think, like, I had some mom that was on yesterday, and she had a 5th class student, and they were trying to do some maths, and like, she was just saying that she was completely struggling with the maths, but kind of embarrassed at the same time as to what she should do. And like that, I just said, look, just get in touch with the school. They'll only be too delighted. And in fairness, the teacher was a fantastic guy, a school I've done some work with in Limerick, and he recorded a small little video on his iPhone of how to do the maths problem that they were working on. So I think many teachers, if we ask, are willing to go above and beyond. There's one thing that has come up over the last weeks, and I think it's sort of the elephant in the room in many ways, is that where do we see the junior cert and leaving cert going? And we've lots of students and lots of anxiety around study, what's going to happen in June. What's your take on it, Alan?
Well, I suppose the first thing to say is that nobody has any definite answers, and we can't know what's going to happen into the future. The best advice that anybody can give, and certainly the best advice that I can give, is that everybody should behave as if the exams are going ahead in June, and continue to work towards that. Because I think, if nothing else, if we lose sight of the goal that we're working towards, and we do tend to lose our motivation, and there's a lot of leaving cert and junior cert students who are struggling to motivate themselves to study at the moment, and that's 100% understandable. But I think the other side of it as well is that the exams, I would see that there would need to happen on in some way, shape or form.
Yeah.
Namely because if they don't happen, there'll be a lot of knock-on effects for third level institutions, for example, as well, next September. So I would imagine that they will have to happen in some form. So I think as challenging as it is for junior cert and leaving cert students, that it is very important that you do keep up your revision schedule. Yes, it's not going to be to the same intensity as it would have been if you're in school. And that's again when we're learning remotely, that we don't have the face-to-face contact with our teachers. We don't have our teachers kind of motivating us every day inside in school and advising us on what best thing to do. Even though we are doing it online, it's just not quite the same, which is very, very challenging for students, and we all acknowledge that. But at the same time, it is important that we all continue to work towards the leaving cert and junior cert in June.
And I suppose that the time is becoming short. I don't know what we're like 6, 9, whatever. I mean, I saw there yesterday how many weeks it was. It's not many weeks away anyway, to say the least. I think after Easter, it's a really short spell. So I suppose like you say, it's kind of forget about almost what's going on and just kind of focus on the study, roughly the study plan that you had, and try to keep. And I presume there's a part where you continue to do some of your day-to-day schoolwork, and then obviously look at your study kind of on top of that as well.
Yeah. So a mixture of both. So obviously work will be assigned, and there's probably a little bit for leaving certs and juniors. There's a little bit of maybe material that needs to be covered still on the syllabus. Although that will be quite small. The thing we broke up in March, so the bulk of all syllabuses would have been covered by then. So there might be just a small bit of that, and then I suppose there's a focus on revision as well. So the exam years are a little bit different to the other year groups in relation to that, and that maybe they need to do their little bit of work for the teacher and submit that work, but then go back and do a revision plan. And that revision plan should be similar to what you would have had in place before schools closed. And it's important to keep up that and try to keep up the momentum as best you can, even though it is very, very difficult at the moment.
And there are many, like, I mean, I'll pop up here afterwards. There's obviously lots of online resources, lots of things I'm sure that schools are already doing. But, you know, there's the likes of Study Clicks. You know, there's lots of these guys that are doing really good stuff. I know that the Dublin, what's it called? Is it Dublin Grinds Academy? Something along those lines, and I'll pop the link up here. Those guys have just recently put up loads of videos on their YouTube channel for free. So again, there's lots of online resources that are out there. It's just a case of, I suppose, looking and finding and trying to make it easier. And again, bearing in mind the cohort of parents and their students that work with us. You know, like we're easily distracted, right? Like having dyslexia and ADHD myself. I find myself literally have to run every day or every second day, because like being locked up in the house is driving me insane. And it's very similar for a lot of our students. You know, it's they miss that sort of flexibility of their normal day. And so maybe by watching a short 10-minute video is as much learning as sitting down and reading a chapter of a book. And many parents have this sort of mentality of, well, this is the way I did it when I was a kid. You know, when I was a student, this is how I studied. But that's not necessarily what works for our kids now.
Like things have changed, and technology has brought us on a little bit, and there's lots of different resources online, and there's a lot of great resources online. And as you said, maybe a 10-minute video might be helpful to a student or a tutorial. But I suppose I'd just give a word of caution there on the online resources, in that they are fantastic, but we need to be selective in our use of them, that we don't become overwhelmed by the huge amount of content that is online as well. So it's about creating a balance there. And I think that's very important to remember as well.
That's a very good point. I mean, again, just taking a few notes from a chat we had earlier in the week. I mean, I know that you have covered some stuff around, you know, the I want to say the acronym, but can do. And so for advice for parents, I'd love if you could just take a few moments to maybe step through that, if you wouldn't mind awfully.
The CAN-DO is a great acronym, I suppose, for making sure that we're all meeting our needs. And I think it's very important that at this time that we do continue to meet our needs as best way we can, because meeting our needs helps us to I suppose, keep a positive sense of well-being as well. So the CAN-DO, we'll just go through it very quickly. The C in CAN-DO stands for connect, aren't connecting. And I suppose as human beings, we're wired for connection, and that's been hugely frustrated at the moment because of the situation that we find her in. We can't connect with our family and our friends in the same way that we want to. And even reaching out, I suppose, or speaking on the phone or FaceTime and things like that, it's still not the same, even though it is connection. But I think it's important to keep up that connection as best we can. For young people, it's no different, that they do need their peer groups. They do need to be in contact with their friends as well. In fact, for teenagers especially, and maybe in primary school too, that your friends kind of become very, very, very important in your life. And that lack of, I suppose, contact at the moment is very challenging for young people. So I think it's important that young people are encouraged to use whatever technology that they have. I know we spend a lot of our time telling them get off their phones, but now we're telling them maybe to spend a little bit more time on your phone and chatting to your friends and things like that. And I think that's healthy as well for them to maintain that connection. And the next one is A, which is to be active. And you said yourself that you're going for regular runs, and everybody, I think we need to build in time. When we were talking earlier about planning out your day, there needs to be a time for exercise as well, and getting out and getting fresh air as best we can. Again, exercise reduces our stress levels, and I think it's very, very good for us. And it's their normal activities, whatever that might be, their sport or their drama or their dance, is cancelled now. But they need to have something in place of that. So I think it's important to regularly build that into the day as well. The N is to notice, and what notice means is to notice what's going on for you at the moment. Like throughout each day, we can all see that there's times where we're maybe a little bit frustrated, maybe there's a little bit of fear creeping in, and we get that unsettled feeling as well. And to notice that in ourselves and to acknowledge it. And just to be aware of it, that you don't become overwhelmed by the amount of negative emotions that maybe the current news feed or the current frustrations in our lives are creating for us. And I think it's important that we remember that, when we're, I suppose, for our children and maybe for ourselves as well, but specifically for our children at the moment, is that when we see a negative behavior from a child or maybe a partner, whoever it might be, that might be behaving in a bad way, that behind that behavior, if it's a negative behavior, there's probably a worrying or difficult feeling happening behind that. And behind that feeling then is usually an unmet need. And very often that unmet need could be maybe something, maybe like a lack of connection, or maybe maybe they might be able to do the same activities that they used to. So there's going to be frustrations there. And understanding where that's coming from can be really helpful for parents. So they're not just, I suppose, tackling the behavior, that they're looking at what's causing the behavior a little bit, and what's happening here for my child, or what's happening here for myself. That's creating this. So acknowledging the feeling, I suppose, is the first step, and then looking at what need could I meet. And we're going to all have to be very creative in how we meet our needs, because we can't do it in the same way that we used to do it. So that's notice. The next one is do, and it stands for do good. And positive psychology shows us that doing good for others, it helps our well-being as well as the person that we're helping as well. And there's great initiatives going on at the moment where there's huge volunteerism all around the country to try to help out in any way that they can. But we can do this inside our own homes as well, as a family, where we can maybe agree in our daily schedule that everybody in the family does one good thing or one nice thing to help somebody else out every day, and that. Because there's going to be tensions and frustrations inside in the house while this is going on, because we are kind of in very close quarters with each other, and that's inevitable and it's normal. But by maybe doing one good thing for each other every day, and it could be just something small, like maybe somebody might do a job that normally someone else would do, or anything at all, really.
Putting your cup in the dishwasher, maybe.
Is something as simple as that. Absolutely something as simple as that. It just shows that we're support. It just shows everybody else, or the other people in the house, that we're here and we're supporting each other. You know what I mean? Because we don't really like to say these things to each other very often, but we can show it by doing that as well. So doing good at this time will be really beneficial for our well-being. And the last one then is the O, which is to open to learning. And obviously our young people are going to be learning when they're doing their schoolwork, but I suppose what we're looking at here is maybe open to learning new things. Certainly we have to be open to learning new ways of doing things, and coming up with new routines, new work practices. which we're all adapting to at the moment. But it's also an opportunity to maybe learn things that we wouldn't have had the opportunity to learn before, so maybe it might be a new hobby, maybe a craft, maybe getting creative, maybe writing, drawing, whatever it is for any of us, be it adults or children as well. There's an opportunity there to be open to learning something new as well. And as we said, there's lots of online resources that can help us through that as well. And it could just create maybe just a new interest that might just help to boost our well-being over this time. So that acronym, I think, is quite helpful. The can do, because it all signifies that there are quite a lot of things that we can do for ourselves to help us maintain a positive well-being over this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think for parents, like for me anyway, specifically, like obviously we're trying to work and you're trying to engage at home as well. I mean, some days obviously you struggle with it, right? I mean, like I struggle with it myself. You're like, Jesus, what's going on, and what's going to be the case in 3 weeks' time? When we get out of this or whatever it is, what's going to be the case in the summer, or But I think you just can't think like it's all about like just dealing in the moment and in the day, and then planning for the following day. And I think that's kind of the key thing for me. And so, like, I try to look at it in terms of the positives of this potential lockdown. So having been at home, like with our son Oshin for the last 2 weeks, seeing him every day and being there for breakfast and like getting a chance to bring him on the green, or there are things I think that are I feel at least in 6 months or a year's time we look back and say, Jesus, wasn't that a lovely time to have that opportunity? And that's the kind of spin I certainly put on it for myself, because I think we make it such that we're so busy, like our days are so full, and we, especially if you've, like your son George, or they're around the same age, like they're in childcare, or they're busy your way during the day, and you see them in the evening for a small spell, whereas now you see them in a completely different light, I think, and it's something nice, I think.
Yeah, I think it is lovely. But just to touch on a point there that you came up with, the negative thinking, it's natural to think negatively. It's in fact it's our first response to any situation, be it good or bad, believe it or not. Because I suppose they're called automatic negative thoughts. And I suppose we're hardwired to see the negative in situations before we see the good. And I suppose that comes from our primal fight or flight response, which is there to protect us, essentially. But that leads then to us thinking negatively automatically. So I think it's important that we practice a little bit of self-compassion when we do start thinking negatively, and realize that that is actually unfortunately our natural tendency, but we do need to take action, as you said, to counteract that, and maybe think of the more positive or more realistic outcomes after all of this, rather than catastrophizing, which means thinking about the negative scenarios and over and over and over again. And as you mentioned there as well, that in positive psychology, the concept of gratitude and being thankful for the things that you actually have can act as a counterbalance against this negative thinking. So taking time out each day, just maybe to even write down, or maybe just list in your own mind mentally as well, just the things that you're grateful for in that day, or grateful for in your life as well, will just help you to I suppose change your perspective a little bit. Because I suppose in a time of a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty, not just about, I suppose, on a health level, but also maybe on an economic level as well, which people have a lot of worries about at the moment too, that it's important to try to counteract those in any ways we can. So definitely meeting your needs, which we spoke about earlier, and maybe a bit of gratitude, which is practicing what you're thankful for as well. There are two good ways of trying to counteract that a little bit.
And I know now, I suppose, just to kind of, again, I'm conscious of your time, but to kind of wrap things up, we're coming into the Easter break, so thank goodness a lot of parents can relax on the homeschooling front. But I mean, again, maybe if there were 2 or 3 kind of key takeaways in terms of how parents can better support their kids in terms of mental well-being or mental fitness, what would your kind of key final thoughts be?
Yeah, and I suppose just on that, it's important that we do have our Easter break, because we need to acknowledge as well that throughout this, that young people this is still their childhood, and it's still a very important time for them. And I know we're limited in what we can do. A lot of people might have planned holidays and to go away, or maybe to visit family over the Easter break and things like that as well. But it's important, I suppose, to plan out things that you possibly can do. No, they will be very limited, but maybe again going back to the routines, you're taking school out of it now and the learning out of it for a couple of weeks. But I think it's important to put things in place of those. So again, going back to maybe trying out new hobbies that you can do in the home, planning out time where you can get out and be active, maybe together as a family a little bit more than what you've been able to do over the last few weeks, and connect and maintaining the connection that way. It again is going to be challenging, but people can be very creative, and chatting to friends and family, you can get great ideas as well, because when we share ideas with each other, do you know what I mean? It increases I suppose the pool of creativity that's there as well.
I mean, just even getting on to do small things. Sorry, Alan, you go ahead. My apologies.
Yeah, no, you're fine. I suppose the other thing then as well for the exam classes, very often a lot of schools at this point will be bringing maybe the leaving certs and possibly the junior certs maybe in for a class over Easter when the school is quieter, or maybe doing revision sessions and planning those things over the Easter break as well. Obviously that's not possible now, so a lot of schools will still be in touch with the exam classes, and I think it's important that because the exams are so close, that they do continue on to maintain a little bit of momentum with their work as well over the next couple of weeks, while also building in probably breaks as well. Obviously it's not going to be of the same intensity, but I think for the exam classes specifically, it's important to keep up with their study on that one.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Actually, I was just kind of as you said it, I was thinking. Obviously, we have the likes of the grind schools that would offer those kind of like Easter revision camps. I'm curious. I must check in with a few of them and see. The likes of the UWIT College and those. Are they going ahead, or are they doing virtually online? Or
a lot of them are moving online.
And
sure. a lot are being offered online. There's a lot of webinars coming up and things like that as well. If you can keep your eye out for those and check the websites and the social media pages.
Yeah, I might pull a few of those things together and kind of pop them up. I suppose before we break, I'd like to maybe just come back to the books that you brought out earlier. I was going to say earlier in the year, but it was potentially last year, was it not?
The primary was last year, and the secondary, believe it or not, was 2016.
So, was it? Go on.
It was, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I might just chuck the cover up there, but you might just talk about them for me, if you wouldn't mind, offline. I think, even just to talk about whether or not they're available and how we can get them and how people might use them.
They are available, and I have a website that I can be contacted through. It's www.changeswellbeing.ie. And there's I have my social media pages as well as Changes Wellbeing on Facebook, and it's just my own name on the other platforms like Instagram and things like that as well. But the books are available. And I think what the books offer, obviously at the beginning, they're a 30-day mental wellbeing challenge, but what they offer is, I suppose, small little challenges, small little new pieces of new learning that young people can do quite easily every day. Probably takes about maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes to get through each challenge, and what that does is it builds up young people's capacity to learn how to take care of their own well-being, and it also, what it does is it helps to build their awareness around areas such as resilience and their capacity to overcome challenges themselves, which I think is very important as well, because all of our resilience is being tested at the moment. So taking part in exercises like this, it can really help boost a young person's self-belief around their own ability to cope through difficult circumstances. And I think a lot of people will be amazed over the next few weeks, just that they hadn't been giving themselves credit for just how resilient they actually are, because the majority of people are doing very, very well through this.
I think so. I've looked at these books quite a bit, and I kind of like flicked through them almost for myself, for the want of a better word. But I specifically like just looking at it's simple things. Like I'm looking at the secondary one right now, and like diet, healthy eating. Like these are all small things, and for ourselves, like day 9 here is I was actually looking through it last night before today's call. Like sleep. Day 10 is exercise, and then day 11 is just general needs and whatnot. But if we think about those, not just for our kids but for ourselves, like
for yourselves,
8 hours sleep obviously is important. Eating relatively well, we talked about it earlier in the call, having a bit of structure and routine and all that sort of stuff. And so I certainly think if parents are interested, it might be really nice kind of thing if you've got a primary school kids and or secondary school kids to either reach out to yourself. I'll put your details up here afterwards, and we do have potentially a few corporates that may be watching? Like that's something that you do as well in terms of working with
Yeah. So
corporates.
yeah, so I basically, but what I've done is I've taken the concepts that I've used in the books, and I suppose I've used them to maybe give a more complicated version through a corporate workshop that I deliver normally over 2 hours. I did one just yesterday morning
Mm.
with a company where everybody was able to log on, and we were able to have, it was nice. It was nice, and actually it was less formal than the face to face, so it actually worked
Yeah.
out very well because everybody was more comfortable to have a chat about things, you know. But again, it's the same concepts that we go through it, and just we're kind of adapting, as a lot of us are, material now as well to cope with the uncertainty that we're facing at the moment as well. But again, when I was developing I suppose a slightly newer workshop, what I suppose I became aware of is that the focus and the concepts, they do come back to what the things we need to be doing at all times, not just in times of fear and uncertainty, that to make sure that we're taking care of our well-being. So yeah, that's again, there's more details available on the website of that
Yeah,
change
I'd be
that I've
delighted
made
to
there.
push some of that stuff out because I think, you know, I think it's something that in general, aside from where we find ourselves right now, it's something that I probably certainly put on the long finger in terms of your own mental well-being, your own mental fitness, and not to jump into it too much, but like I would have never seen myself. I don't know how I correctly position this, but I would have never seen myself as somebody who had issues in and around my mental well-being. But like many of us, you know, we go through peaks and troughs and whatnot. And so
Yeah.
when we returned from America, a number of months back, like I would have struggled, I suppose, quite a lot in terms of just getting used to being back in Ireland, the normality of the new normal based
The new normal,
of
yeah,
not
yeah.
being here, and then expecting a child, and you know, various different things that are going on in life, and yeah, it was kind of a relatively difficult time, but you know, I think it was by going and actually, well, I went to a counselor, I went to a psychologist for a few sessions, and it was it was the most fearful thing I did in many ways, in admitting that I wanted to go and do that, and it was the best thing I did in many ways too, because I think that vulnerability, it allowed me to open up a small bit. And it wasn't that there was anything wrong. It was just that I was sort of overwhelmed or whatever. And
Yeah.
I think the more we think about and look after our mental fitness, then the better it is for us personally, but also for our families, for our kids, for our colleagues. You know, I think it's so important.
And that's the phrase that I use more than even well-being, or definitely more than mental health, is the concept of mental fitness.
Fitness.
And I think what that concept tells us is that it's a little bit different from, I suppose, reacting to something when we find ourselves in a crisis. Mental fitness means that we can do things on a regular basis to build up our resilience and our mental fitness as well, and that we do need to build self-care into our daily and weekly routines. And we do need to develop that in our young people, but we also need to develop that sense in ourselves as well, because a lot of parents tend to put everybody ahead of themselves to their own detriment. And I like the phrase, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. And like, self-care isn't selfish. You know, it is necessary. That parents have a lot of kind of extra responsibility now on their hands all of a sudden as well, and they need to take care of themselves as well if they are going to be, I suppose, able to be there fully for the people, their kids and maybe their partners and their extended family. If they need to take care of themselves, if they're to be able to deal with all that and be there in a way that they want to be for them, you know, and not become overwhelmed by everything. So it's important to remember that as well.
Yeah, I know we've sort of jumped off on a bit of a tangent there, but I think it's important. I mean, like, again, for me, exercise was my biggest thing. And I think what actually happened is I got injured while I was in Boston, and then didn't run, didn't do the gym, or didn't do any of those things, didn't do triathlon. And it obviously had a big enough impact on me. But like, no different to exercise, you know, to be at a certain level or standard, you know, you need to train. And kind of in and around our mental fitness, it's almost like we need to put in the hours, or we need to put in the time to be looking after ourselves as well.
Absolutely, and like anything else, it can be challenging at the beginning to, I suppose, to bring these new things into our lives. But after a while, they become automatic habits, and we just start doing them like any other new skill that we learned. They just become more automatic, and they become easier and easier as time goes on. That's why we did the kind of the 30-day challenge, because the idea is that after 30 days of that, this stuff would become kind of just impulsive. It'll just happen automatically.
It's almost like the basics. Come here, Alan. Thank you so much. I'm sure we could keep chatting for another hour, but I'm conscious
Absolutely.
of your time, obviously. I'm conscious of people listening to the two of us rambling on. So listen, thank you so much for your time. Thank you
No
for
harm, James.
anybody
Great to
that's
chat.
listening. Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I
Good
really
chat.
appreciate you putting a bit of effort into this, and I think for many parents out there, it's going to be really useful. Certainly I'll wrap up anything that we talked about here. I'll pop in a few links, and if anyone has any questions or queries, either in terms of what we just discussed, please just get in touch with myself, James at yourability.com, and I'll put Alan's details up here as well. Thanks a million, Alan.
Excellent.
Talk soon.
Thanks, James. See you soon.